been on the ground for months working at this, preparing for it, and long-term observers will remain even after some of us principals have left. The work of democracy is hard and sometimes risky. And I want to thank the commitment of all of the observer teams for their contribution to the oversight of this election. Over 400 observers in 9 different observer missions have all agreed on the positive aspects of this election. We're also particularly sensitive to the backdrop of this election, in which a dedicated election worker, Chris Msando, was murdered. Great credit is due to all of his fellow workers who, despite their horror and sorrow and grief and sense of despair, just continued their work, dedicated and determined to deliver a fair election to their country. And that is a definition of courage, it's a definition of patriotism, and it deserves the gratitude of all Kenyans and the respect of all candidates in this election as they evaluate their future choices. Above all else, this election belongs to the people of Kenya. It is their hopes for the future that are on the line. And we who are privileged to observe do so very mindful of the fact that we are here supporting the legitimacy of the process, the sanctity of each Kenyan's vote. We are not here taking the side of any candidate or party. Our allegiance is to a peaceful, transparent, accountable, free, and fair election. Now, I'd just comment that I was serving as Secretary of State in 2013 when the last election took place. And in the aftermath of that, I had occasion to work with and talk to both candidates and try to work through differences of opinion about the outcome. I am convinced that goodwill and good faith and a proper analysis of this election and the rules which have guided it, that Kenya can move forward and embrace progress, significant progress in its democracy. We call on all the candidates, whether they are victors or losers in this race, to work within the rule of law and the legitimate dispute process in order to challenge any aspect of this election where they have evidence that somehow that dispute made a material difference on the outcome of the election. We affirm with conviction that the judicial process, the judicial system of Kenya, and the election laws themselves make full and adequate provision for accountability in this election. The streets do not. Now, I want to congratulate the people of Kenya for their patience and their calm and for turning out in large numbers to participate in choices about their future. Importantly, we would like to make clear the test of this election is really quite straightforward. It is whether the vote of registered Kenyans has been protected or is being or will be and will be counted in a manner that gives confidence through transparency and accountability to the overall election. That's the test. It is our firm conclusion that the IEBC has put in place and is thus far following a detailed process of paper ballot counting and security, which, if followed through to the final steps, can give each Kenyan confidence that their vote was properly recorded and that therefore this election can appropriately certify the outcome. Yes, we observed minor variances here and there that evidenced a deviation from the established process, but none that we thus far feel affected the overall integrity of the process. Now, there are things that need to be refined and corrected, lessons that need to be applied, but believe me, this is true of almost any election anywhere. The bottom line is that we believe the IEBC put in place a detailed, transparent process of voting, counting, reporting, and securing the vote, all of which lends significant credibility and accountability, and therefore can, when and if followed through to the end, provide confidence in the results. That is what is important to each and every Kenyan's vote. Now, we witnessed in more than 400 different observation posts at random choices around the country, agents for many candidates, all being simultaneously included in reaching an understanding of what constituted a valid ballot. We witnessed multiple parties sharing in the simultaneous counting of each ballot, in the opening and shutting of the polling stations, in the opening and the sealing of the ballot boxes, after themselves counting. We witnessed the signing off of multiple parties who publicly agreed on the final tallies of the 34A counting summaries, and who received copies of those documents on the spot. All of this provides an extensive, traceable trail of agreement by many parties on the paper balloting process, and therefore on the outcome, including a vast majority of stations where both NASA and Jubilee agents were present and both signed off, and certainly the vast majority of those stations sampled by the observers in many places around the country. In the end, let me emphasize, it is the paper ballots and the accounting process established by the IEBC that tell the story of this election, not the electronic transmission of those numbers. So we call on all Kenyans to carefully evaluate the facts and the details of the process that the IEBC put in place and has been painstakingly following. We hope they will agree with us that when fairly and fully implemented to completion, that process provides Kenyans with the integrity of this election. Dr. Kerry.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me tell you how much I enjoyed observing the Kenyan election process with Secretary John Kerry on behalf of the Carter Center, whom I like to recognize for its great work in supporting democracy in our continent, in the African continent. Secretary Kerry and I come obviously from two different backgrounds, but yet we share the universal language of democracy. And then naturally we came to the same fundamental conclusion he shared with you. As a Senegalese, as an African, I'm very satisfied with the fact that Kenyan people went to the electoral booths in large numbers. On election days, I witnessed very long lines of men and women, some carrying babies, all patiently waiting to exercise their political rights. I saw party agents sitting together the whole day, quietly discussing. The same atmosphere prevailed during the counting process. Presiding officers, I saw, knew what they have to do and treated voters with civility. These are excellent signs for democracy in Kenya. Like Senegal, Kenya is a country made of a large number of young people. Actually, I think 60% of the population might be below 35, like in Senegal. Our African young people must grow up in the culture of democracy, so they believe and respect the institution and the leaders people choose for themselves through fair and free elections. This election that took place marked, to my view, progress, as they were much more peaceful than the previous ones. No incidents were noted on election day, although, as Secretary Kerry said, the brutal murder of Chris Musanto is still a shock to everybody, and it must be investigated fully, and the murderers must be brought to justice. I like to also recognize the hard and good work of IEBC. That is the most important body, as we know, in organizing these elections. All staff, I think, honored the memory of their assassinated colleagues by staying focused and dedicated to their task. They need to be recognized and even congratulated. IEBC must continue its work to its end, while substantiating its result with the Form 34A and Form 34B, and I understand that is going on. I heard that there might be 3 women governors. I would be delighted if it is confirmed, because women must be involved at decision-making level. And I take the opportunity, Madam Minister, in front of me, to strongly recommend that the constitutional provision of the 2/3 be implemented the soonest, so Kenya lives up to its CEDAW commitment, the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Soon, ladies and gentlemen, we will hear final result from IEBC, and I would like to see all candidates accept the verdict of the Kenyan people. The winner must be gracious in their victory. The candidates who are not lucky this time around, and I used also to lose election, I know how it feels, but they just must carry on their political commitment. Those who will contest the result must take their case to court, and at the end, the Kenyan democracy will just keep growing stronger and stronger. Thank you.
So we're happy to answer a few questions. I'm not sure how we just will recognize a few people.